What's happening out there, everybody? This is Hayden Adams with A Designer Who Codes. I've got this project at the very top, Hello World, that I use some Bootstrap on, and I have a row 1, a row 2, and a row 3. What I want to do is I want to add a bottom border between each one of these rows. Now the HTML is looking pretty good. Div class row, div class row, and div class row. So I can use a pseudo class with each one of these rows to put a bottom border between each one. If I head to the custom CSS file, I'm going to say row, curly brackets, and say border, bottom. I'm going to add a 1 pixel solid, and we'll use just a black color here to drop it in. And if I spell the word black, that could help. Perfect. So those border lines are coming in, but the thing is at the very bottom, I don't need this bottom border. The borders are meant to separate the rows, but there's no row at the bottom. That was a tongue twister. So I'm going to bring in a last child because the last child out of all of these rows is the bottom row. What I'm going to do is after where I said row, I want to take out a bottom or last child and say last child. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say border bottom. I'm going to say 0. What that does is it takes out the very last child, which in this case is the last child of the row. So the very bottom one happens to be that way. If I add another row, so if I added a 4th row and I said row 4, paragraph 1, row 4, paragraph 2, now you can see that the last child becomes the 4th one and we're all looking pretty good. Well, looking almost pretty good. My problem is that the spacing at the very top and the spacing at the very bottom doesn't line up. So the design's kind of wacky. What I want to do first is I'm going to add a little extra spacing so we can make this even more apparent. On that row, I'm going to say padding, and I'm going to say 1.5 rem and then 0. What that essentially means is top and bottom goes first, left and right goes second. So when I add that space, it's looking better, but we still know that our spacing's off. And that's because if we inspect this, the problem is not in the row anymore. Let me move this down just a little bit. Our problem comes in inside of that paragraph. So each paragraph has a space. The space is at the very bottom, but not at the top. So what I want to do is I want to take the space out of the last paragraph to make these all line up. So we're going to use the last of type in this case, because for me, I'm going to take out the space in the last paragraph. So if I come down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say row, and then the child becomes last of type. And what I can do here is I can say margin bottom. I don't know why my little tooltips are all coming up crazy today, but they just are. So margin bottom, I'm going to say is 0 px. And now, ooh, that looks pretty darn good. Looks really good, in fact. Now we have the equal space, because if we come take a look at this last paragraph, well, now the margin is on the top one, but not at the bottom one. But let's throw a little wrench in this, because I think about writing CSS as trying to make it as bulletproof as possible. Let's say that normally we're going to have all paragraphs, but I have an addendum on row number 2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say UL, I'm going to say LI, I'm a list. And then we'll also add a list again and say I'm also a list. And just like that, we got a problem here. The spacing was taken out of 2 things. So we kind of have a problem. If we do our little inspect area, there's no margin now on the paragraph. So while it did work at the top one and these last 2, we have a problem here because the spacing was taken out of the UL. Let me just click on the UL for a second here. So the spacing came out because we said all last of types. Well, that's because each type took out the last space. The type refers to the type of paragraph or anything else inside of that arena. So the last of type, to make it really be seen a lot clearer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say color and purple. Purple it is. And now take a look. So what happened was, because that UL is the immediate child, the UL right here, the last P and the last UL, because they're each types of childs, they also turn purple. So while the last of type really could have worked in this case right here, what we need to do is we need to bring in the last child. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off that margin bottom. We'll still say color purple for a split second. And I'm going to say row and then last child. So what this is going to do is it's going to take the last child. Now how the parent child works, we'll just say color blue on this occasion. Now take a look at it. So this was still turning purple because the last of type was still being caught, but the last child catches the last of anything in here. So if this row is the parent, these P's are the children along with the UL, because it doesn't delineate what kind of type. It's more of a generic selection versus a specific selection. So last of type did work if only I had paragraphs. However, the last child really works because it doesn't matter what it is at the bottom as long as it's the last one. So we'll bring back that margin bottom. Let me just put that right here. Margin bottom. I don't know why my tooltips are going crazy today, but they are. So we'll say margin bottom 0px. And now this looks much better. So now this is a lot cleaner in the design, and it doesn't matter if I were to add one more paragraph tag. I could add one more here for fun, because now what happens is I'm still a paragraph. Paragraph. And now take a look at it. So now we have that blue in this arena, and I'll just again take out this color. And now we're looking good. So again, we can take out the purple color. And again, these all look really clean now. The spacing and the margin, we have margin spacing inside of here. So if you look at the paragraph, there's spacing here. You look at the overall ULLI, there's spacing in there as well. But the last paragraph does not have spacing, making it completely clean of the design, whereby it doesn't matter what kind of code or HTML tag, it's going to work regardless. And now I have a much cleaner design. I don't have to worry about what kind of writing I have inside of these areas. It all lines up and looks much cleaner.